What is going on, Pats Nation? It's Patriots Global back here with another video, and yeah, by the title, you can tell that I'm a firm believer in the thought that the New England Patriots are using September as their preseason. Before I get into why exactly I think that, make sure you guys checked the pinned comment below if you would like to win a Cam Newton home jersey, and of course a size of the winner's choosing. The winner will be announced on October 12th. If you would like to get multiple entries into this contest, again for this Cam Newton home jersey, you can become a Patreon and get multiple entries. You can get merch. Each piece of merch you buy does count as is each individual entry, so you can get multiple doing that. All the rules, the directions, all of that good stuff will be pinned in the first comment below, so check that out. But as we all know, this NFL offseason was like none other. We did not get any preseason games. It went from the regular 4 to just having 2 to not having any of them. And that is a big deal. That's a big deal because, look, we also did not get any offseason programs. Now, we did get a couple weeks of training camp, but even those few weeks we got were not pure training camp because we still had to be very careful on how the players were interacting with each other. But you also have to understand that we did not get, OTAs. We didn't get mini camp. We didn't get the rookie mini camp. We didn't get any of that good stuff. So these players have not been playing football for a while now. They were not ready to just randomly come back and just jump into things fully. You had to be careful with how you were approaching that factor. And of course, training camp also started later than it normally would have. And I think we're seeing just how much that the loss of the offseason has really affected these players because of how much injuries there are. These players just had to get back and get into football mode within a snap of a finger. There was no gradually getting back into it over the course of a few months. It was within a couple of weeks getting back into it. You need to be ready for the start of the season. And look, maybe some people can mentally do that, but no one can physically get their body within a couple of weeks into that situation of getting back into football and playing football at the NFL level again. You can't go from gradually doing it for years within a few months to just all of a sudden doing it within a couple of weeks. With that, of course, being said, teams did not know how to evaluate players. When you are evaluating players from your 90-man roster, which, of course, that also got bumped down to 80 due to the whole pandemic, they had to go based off of the couple weeks of training camp, along with what they saw virtually in meetings. And, of course, how a player is doing in meetings is extremely different from the physical aspect he brings and how he's going to play on the field. You can't see a player's 40 time and his speed and how his hands are able to do it, how he's able to rush the passer or his technique. You're not able to see any of that within a meeting on a Zoom call. But of course, what are these teams supposed to do? What is Bill Belichick supposed to do? Cry about it to the NFL? They're not going to change anything. Really, there's not much they can do. The fact that we got a season was huge. Let's just be grateful at least that we got that. So, knowing that, Belichick had to take things into his own hands. And as a Pats fan, anyone would know that in a regular season, Bill Belichick usually treats September kind of still as that extended preseason. Now that we're not getting a preseason at all, Belichick is completely using September, and we'll see if he even leans into October as the Patriots preseason to really be able to evaluate each of these players, see who brings what and is going to be best for this team. This team is doing well. I think that some people are very surprised on how well this team is doing. So many people expected this team to be so much worse than, they have been. Essentially, this team should be undefeated. You heard me say it before, you're going to hear me say it again. 1 yard line. 1 yard and this team is undefeated. But understand that due to the fact that this team has not been able to have an offseason, Belichick doesn't know exactly what personnel he has, what the strength and the weaknesses that he has, and how exactly to game plan against these teams, not knowing what exactly he has with the team at hand. Now, maybe in a season where, let's say, the Patriots still had Kyle Van Noy, Jamie Collins, or whatnot, maybe this would be different. but it is extremely different due to the personnel that they lost. I mean, they lost Dante Hightower to opt-outs. They lost Marcus Cannon to the offensive line due to opt-outs and lost Dante Scarnecchio also. At the linebacker position, you're talking about losing everyone, really. Landon Roberts, Jamie Collins, Kyle Van Noy, and again, Dante Hightower. You're replacing that with a third-year linebacker you haven't really seen play too much. One, due to injuries his first year, and two, because of the personnel and the depth you had last year. And then the rest of the guys essentially are either new or they're rookies. Again, I've said this before. I think some of the issues the Patriots still are having is due to personnel. I think personnel changes still do have to be rearranged, and I get that that's still going to be something that is evaluated as we go on, especially because of the pandemic. But I do also think that right now it's because we didn't have an offseason to get everything together, to get this team comfortable, to really dive into things physically with the playbook. So maybe mid-season, and as we go on from mid-season, we could see what this team is really going to look like for the 2020 season. It's not going to be a case where, by the end of October, you know exactly what you're going to get from this team. It's just not going to happen. And before we continue with this and, the personnel changes that Belichick is doing and what he's doing to really make September that preseason, I do want to let you guys know that the wait for football is finally over, as we already know, heading in now to week 4. I keep thinking we're in week 3, but we're in a week 4 now for football. And you might be upset that you're not able to be at a game this year, which is understandable, but you can still get in with all of the NFL action over at BetOnline. Now, BetOnline is going that extra mile to make sure that you get in on everything imaginable for this upcoming season. All the way from game spreads and totals to team, player, and coaching props, BetOnline gives you more options to wager than any place online. Now, you can get in on their season opening bonuses today and start off wagering on win, division, and championship futures today. All you have to do is head to BetOnline today and take advantage of all of the great sign-up bonuses that they have. BetOnline, your 100% open 24/7 casino. So go ahead and check them out. BetOnline, again, your online sportsbook experts. But as we have seen so far this season, from the first 3 weeks, we've seen Belichick doing a little bit of some funky stuff. You're seeing some interesting personnel groupings. You're seeing some guys being healthy scratches or not being game day active, which has confused some people. And then also so far each week, we are seeing Bill Belichick bringing up at least two players from the practice squad and making them active for game day. Sometimes they're getting a good amount of snaps, sometimes they're not. I think it all kind of depends on the depth, the game, and the personnel. I mean, we saw J.J. Taylor promoted. He went off in the game. Essentially, that is why he is still on the roster, because of just how much of a factor that he showed he can become. We saw Isaiah Zuber last week getting his chance. We've seen Nick Thurman. We've seen Xavier Williams, the other defensive tackle. And I fully expect Bill Belichick to continue doing this. Exactly for how long, I'm not too sure. But this is Belichick's way for seeing how these players are going to interact and play in an actual NFL game, because we don't get a preseason. I'm sure he wishes that this would be in a game where it didn't necessarily count towards playoffs and potential Super Bowl and regular season statistics. But in the end, that's the situation we're at. Better to do it in the beginning of the season when all 32 teams are still trying to find their identity and get things together than doing it mid to late season when you have all these questions and, teams are starting to pick up the pace more. We've seen more roster moves and, roster applications than we have seen, I would say, any other season, from players being promoted from the practice squad, being placed back on the practice squad, players being placed on the injured reserve. It is clear to me that Belichick is treating September as still a little bit of an offseason. I can't say completely of an offseason, because in the end it is the regular season. It is still important. So I think he is still a little bit more game ready than he would be, let's say in the regular season. He's game planning much more and being more careful than he would, let's say, in the regular season than he would if it was the preseason. But he's trying to completely figure out the identity of this team for the 2020 season, and also figuring out just what does he have within his personnel. Is there somebody within the practice squad? Is there somebody, that is still a free agent out there that he can bring onto this team that's going to make a genuine impact that he was not able to see? Because let's also keep this in mind, guys, that how you perform in a meeting or how you perform in training camp or off-season programs, it's extremely different from how you'll actually perform on game day. We've seen multiple times that there's been a player that performed really, really well in an offseason, in training camp, OTAs, all that good stuff, but then played 4 preseason games and was able to do literally nothing. And we've seen that the reverse way. Guys who are not able to do anything during the offseason, but then enter the preseason and go off. Playing in an actual NFL game with actual NFL competition that isn't your team is extremely beneficial, and that's really what is going to showcase these guys' ability. Even in coverage assignments, even in running back situations, wide receiver situations, in a normal regular season, you have your depth chart at guys who are going to be, the starting guys, the second string guys, the third string guys, and who exactly is going to cover who. Who's number 1 on the depth chart, number 2, number 3. And right now, that's not the situation. Even with this past week, when the Patriots had to cover a top 5 tight end in Darren Waller with the Raiders, Belichick didn't have one guy covering him. He switched it up to see, okay, who is going to be the best at essentially covering big tight ends when we have to play them. The Patriots have to play Travis Kelce, George Kittle, Hunter Henry. We can go on with some of the best tight ends that they have to play. And with Patrick Chung out of the question, where are the Patriots going to go to cover him? We saw Juwan Williams on him for the majority of the time, but we also saw rookie safety Kyle Duggar. We saw Jonathan Jones. We saw Stephon Gilmore. And even with the running back committee, I think we all expected it to be a committee, but Belichick is really giving all of these running backs a good amount of time to do, or rather showcase, their ability. Usually in a regular NFL season, we would usually have a pure punt returner and kick returner, but right now Belichick is giving everybody that ability. He's given J.J. Taylor, he's given Kyle Duggar, Damiere Byrd. He's given so many people chances at that position because he doesn't know exactly who that pure guy should be at the returner position. I think the really interesting part here too is that during a preseason game, what would the Patriots do? During the first half, they have certain personnel playing within those first 2 quarters. And then coming out of halftime for the last 2 quarters, quarters 3 and 4, they'll have pretty much completely opposite different personnel. They did that week 1 with their running backs. They didn't have J.J. Taylor doing everything within the first 2 quarters. Then after halftime, that's when they saw what J.J. Taylor was able to do. They kind of switched up the personnel for the second half than we saw in the first half. But that's going to be it for today's video, guys. I hope that this kind of showcased what Bill Belichick is doing right now, what this team is doing, and kind of where their mindset is. I know that because of the pandemic, it screwed a lot of things up, and I think a lot of people are kind of confused on just the season and where things are going with NFL teams. So I hope I was able to clear a little bit up for you guys and was able to make a clear picture on where this team is headed. But that's going to be it for today's video. Make sure to leave a big like on this video and subscribe to the channel for all of your NFL news, or Patriots news rather. But like always, thank you all so much for watching, and I'll catch you in my next video.